My name is Imani, and I am 34 years old. For 3 years, I was the rising star at Innovate Solutions, a marketing firm that prided itself on its forward-thinking, inclusive culture, or so its glossy brochures claimed. I was a senior brand strategist, the only Black woman in a leadership position, and I was good at my job. I loved the creativity, the strategy, the thrill of landing a major client. I thought I had found my professional home. Then the jokes started. They were small at first, casual remarks from the company's golden boy, Declan, that made the air in the conference room crackle with discomfort. I went to HR, expecting the swift, decisive action our company handbook promised. Instead, I was met with platitudes and condescension. My complaints were ignored, then minimized, then turned back on me. What they didn't know was that my grandmother, a woman who marched for civil rights in the 60s, taught me two things. Never let anyone diminish your worth, and always keep receipts. The receipts I was collecting were about to cost them millions and make headlines they never saw coming. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you how I took on a corporate giant, hit like and subscribe to hear more true stories about fighting for respect and the power of speaking truth to power. Before the nightmare began, my life was a picture of hard-earned success. I had a beautiful fiancé, Jordan, a high school history teacher who shared my passion for justice in a quiet evening at home. We lived in a sun-drenched apartment filled with art and books. I had a career that challenged and fulfilled me. I was proud of the work I did at Innovate, leading a team that developed award-winning campaigns. I was respected by my colleagues and trusted by our clients. I believed in the company's mission, or at least the one they sold to the world. Innovate Solutions was the kind of place that had a diversity and inclusion statement on its website and celebrated Black History Month with a catered soul food lunch and a carefully curated jazz playlist. They talked the talk, and, for a while, I believed they walked the walk. My direct superior, Alistair, was a decent man who valued my work and promoted me based on merit. The CEO, Mr. Sterling, was an old-school executive who seemed to see me as a symbol of his company's modern, progressive values. The problem was Declan. He was the firm's top rainmaker, a senior account executive with a preternatural gift for charming clients and closing deals. He was handsome, charismatic, and universally beloved by upper management. He was also a casual racist, the kind whose prejudice was cloaked in the guise of edgy humor and just kidding banter. At first, the comments were subtle. Microaggressions I tried to ignore. He'd comment on how articulate I was, as if it were a surprise. He'd touch my hair in meetings, an invasive gesture disguised as a compliment. I'd told myself to pick my battles, that this was the price of admission in a corporate world still dominated by men like him. The first time he crossed a clear line was in a team brainstorming session. We were working on a campaign for a new line of athletic wear. "We need something with energy, something authentic," I said, pointing to a demographic slide. "What about Imani? She could probably teach us a few things about—" Declan paused for effect, a smirk playing on his lips. "Running." He winked at the rest of the team. A few people chuckled nervously. One junior designer looked at the floor, her face flushed with discomfort. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. The joke, with its lazy, racist stereotype, hung in the air, poisoning the creative energy of the room. I said nothing, choosing to kill him with a silent, icy stare. I didn't want to be the angry Black woman who couldn't take a joke, but the incident lingered, a sour taste in my mouth. The person who noticed my unease was Javier, the head of the graphic design department. He was a quiet, observant man, a third-generation Mexican-American who understood the subtle codes of the corporate world. "You okay?" he asked me later that day by the coffee machine. Declan's a piece of work, isn't he? He's just a lot, I said, not ready to confide in anyone. Yeah, a lot, Javier said, his eyes telling me he understood more than I was saying. Just so you know, you're not imagining it. His validation was a small comfort, but it didn't solve the problem. A week later, Declan did it again. This time in front of a client. We were presenting a new campaign, and I was walking them through the strategy. As I finished, the client, a woman in her 50s, smiled. That was brilliant, Imani, truly impressive. She's a natural, Declan said, slapping me on the back with a little too much force. It's in the blood, right? Rhythm, soul, marketing, it's all the same thing. He laughed, and the clients, not wanting to create an awkward moment, laughed along with him. I felt my face burn with a mixture of rage and humiliation. He had reduced my expertise, my years of education and hard work, to a racist cliché in front of a client. This time, I knew I couldn't let it go. That afternoon, I made an appointment with Cynthia, the head of human resources. I walked into her office with a sense of nervous resolve, ready to trust the system. I was about to learn that the system was designed to protect men like Declan, not women like me. Cynthia's office was decorated in calming shades of beige and gray, a space designed to neutralize conflict. She was a woman in her late 40s with a perfectly styled bob and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She listened with an expression of polite concern as I recounted Declan's comments, carefully using the neutral corporate language I knew was expected of me. I didn't use the word racist. I said his jokes were inappropriate, unprofessional, and created a hostile environment. I see, Cynthia said when I finished, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on her notepad. She hadn't written down a single word. Well, Imani, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, but you have to understand Declan is, well, he's Declan. He has a very unique style. It's part of his charm, what makes him so good with clients. I'm sure he meant nothing by it. I stared at her, my carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. Cynthia, he's making racist jokes at my expense. It's not about his style. It's about creating a workplace where I feel respected. Of course, she said quickly, her smile tightening. We want you to feel respected, but we also have to be careful not to create a culture where people are afraid to be themselves. We don't want to stifle creativity with oversensitivity, do we? Oversensitivity. The word was a slap in the face. So, you're saying I'm being oversensitive? I'm saying that perhaps you're misinterpreting his intent. Boys will be boys, you know. He's a bit of a frat boy, but his heart is in the right place. He's a top performer, Imani, a huge asset to this company. We can't afford to alienate him over a few misplaced jokes. The message was crystal clear. Declan's value to the company was greater than my right to a harassment-free workplace. My complaint was not a problem to be solved, it was an inconvenience to be managed. I'll have a quiet word with him, Cynthia said, standing up to signal the end of our meeting. I'll remind him to be more mindful, but I trust that this can be handled discreetly without rocking the boat. Team cohesion is so important. I walked out of her office feeling naive and foolish. I had expected an advocate. Instead, I had found an apologist. The quiet word Cynthia had with Declan had the opposite of the intended effect. He knew I had reported him, and he saw it as a declaration of war. The overt jokes stopped, replaced by a more insidious form of harassment. He began to systematically exclude me. I was left off important email chains. Client meetings were scheduled on my days off without my knowledge. My team members were invited to unofficial brainstorming sessions in his office, sessions I only found out about later. He was isolating me, subtly undermining my authority, and making it impossible for me to do my job effectively. I started documenting everything. I kept a detailed log on my personal laptop, a digital version of the receipts my grandmother always talked about. Every missed meeting, every exclusionary email, every passive-aggressive comment, I wrote it all down with dates, times, and witnesses. Javier, seeing what was happening, became my silent ally, forwarding me emails I had been left off of and giving me a heads up about meetings Declan was trying to hide. After a month of this, I went back to HR. This time, I came prepared with a printed copy of my log. "Cynthia, the situation has escalated," I said, placing the document on her desk. "Declan is now actively sabotaging my work." She glanced at the first page of the log, her expression one of extreme irritation. "Imani, I spoke to Declan. He assured me it was all a misunderstanding. He feels terrible that you took his humor the wrong way. Frankly, he feels like he has to walk on eggshells around you now." "Did you look at the evidence I just gave you?" I asked, my voice rising despite my best efforts to keep it level. "What I see here is a series of minor administrative oversights," she said, pushing the papers back towards me. "People get left off emails. It happens. It sounds to me like you are the one who is having trouble working as a part of a team. Perhaps you're not a good fit for our collaborative culture." The threat was veiled but unmistakable. I was no longer the victim. I was the problem. My attempts to seek redress were being painted as a failure to be a team player. "I think you should take a few days to think about whether you really want to continue down this path," Cynthia said, her voice now cold. "It would be a shame to see a promising career like yours derailed by an inability to get along with colleagues." I left her office that day knowing two things with absolute certainty. HR was not going to help me, and my job was now on the line. I had a choice to make. I could back down, accept the toxic environment, and try to survive, or I could fight. That night, I called my grandmother. I told her everything. When she finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "The only thing that allows evil to flourish, baby girl, is the silence of good people. You are a good person. Do not be silent." The next day, I requested a meeting with the CEO, Mr. Sterling. I was done with the chain of command. I was taking it to the top. Mr. Sterling's office was on the top floor, a sprawling corner suite with panoramic views of the city. It was a space designed to communicate power, with dark wood, leather furniture, and an intimidatingly large desk. He greeted me with a warm, fatherly smile, the kind he reserved for promising young employees and important clients. "Imani, good to see you. What can I do for you? Alistair tells me your team is knocking it out of the park on the new sportswear account." He gestured for me to sit, but I remained standing. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling, but I'm here to discuss a serious internal matter." His smile faltered slightly. He did not like internal matters. He liked results, profits, and positive press. "I'm listening," he said, leaning back in his chair, his fingers steepled. I laid out the entire story, from Declan's initial jokes to his systematic exclusion, to my 2 fruitless meetings with Cynthia in HR. I presented him with a copy of my detailed log. I was professional, factual, and calm. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I simply presented the evidence. He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. He glanced at the log, but didn't read it closely. When I was finished, he let the silence stretch for a long moment. "Declan is one of our top performers," he said, finally, the exact same words Cynthia had used. "He's a character, no doubt, a bit of a throwback, but he brings in millions of dollars for this company. Clients love him. His behavior is creating a hostile work environment for me, and it is costing the company my own productivity," I countered. "He's a man's man," Mr. Sterling continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "He says things that are a little off-color sometimes. I'm sure he doesn't mean any real harm by it. In my day, we had thicker skins. You have to be able to take a bit of ribbing to succeed in this business." "Mr. Sterling, this isn't ribbing. This is a pattern of racist and exclusionary behavior. It is illegal, and it is against the policies written in our own company handbook." He sighed, a look of paternal disappointment on his face. "Imani, you are a very talented young woman. You have a bright future here. Don't throw it all away over a personality clash. Declan is a vital part of this team. We need you to find a way to work with him. Be the bigger person. Show some leadership. That's what it takes to get to the next level." It was the final, devastating blow. The CEO of the company was telling me, in no uncertain terms, to endure racial harassment for the sake of the bottom line. He was siding with the rainmaker over the rulebook. He was telling me that my value was conditional, and the condition was my silence. "So, to be clear, you are not going to take any action?" I asked, my voice cold. "I am asking you to be a team player," he said, his tone now firm. "Can you do that for me?" "Thank you for your time, Mr. Sterling," I said, turning and walking toward the door. I had my answer. I had exhausted every internal channel. I had trusted the system, and the system had failed me at every level. As I rode the elevator down from the top floor, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The fear and uncertainty were gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They had left me with no other option. That evening, I did two things. First, I emailed my entire log of incidents, along with a summary of my meetings with HR and the CEO, to my personal email address from my work computer, creating a digital timestamp. Second, I Googled top civil rights attorneys in the state. The name that came up repeatedly was Evelyn Reed. Her website was filled with testimonials from clients who had taken on powerful corporations and won. She was known as a bulldog, a brilliant legal mind with a deep passion for workplace justice. I sent her a brief professional email outlining my situation. Her office responded within the hour, scheduling a consultation for the following afternoon. Evelyn Reed was a formidable woman in her 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of unshakable confidence. I sat in her office, a space filled with law books and framed newspaper clippings of her past victories, and told her my story for what felt like the 100th time. But this time, it was different. She didn't question my interpretation. She didn't tell me I was being sensitive. She listened, her expression growing more and more grim with each detail I provided. When I finished, she looked at the evidence I had brought, my log, my performance reviews, the company handbook. "They are fools," she said, her voice a low, dangerous hum. "They have left a paper trail of willful negligence and retaliation a mile long. They didn't just ignore your complaints, Miss Johnson. They actively chose to protect the harasser and punish the victim. This is not just a lawsuit. This is a case that could set a precedent." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we fight back," she said with a thin, dangerous smile. "We are going to make them regret the day they decided you were disposable." The first shot was fired a week later. A process server walked in to Innovate Solutions and handed a thick envelope to a stunned receptionist. The lawsuit had been officially filed. It named the company, Declan, Cynthia, and Mr. Sterling as defendants. It alleged racial discrimination, creation of a hostile work environment, and unlawful retaliation. The reaction from the company was swift and brutal. 2 days after they were served, I was called into a meeting with Alistair and a stony-faced Cynthia. "Imani, this is very difficult," Alistair began, his eyes full of a pained reluctance that told me he was just the messenger. "Due to a recent restructuring and performance review, we've had to make the decision to terminate your position, effective immediately." "Performance review?" I asked, my voice calm. "My last review was 3 weeks ago. I received the highest possible marks and a bonus." "The market has shifted," Cynthia said, her voice like ice. "Your skill set is no longer aligned with the company's forward-facing strategy." It was a lie, and we all knew it. This was a blatant act of retaliation, a punishment for daring to sue them. It was also the single stupidest move they could have made. "I see," I said, standing up. "I'll just go and clear out my desk." "That won't be necessary," Cynthia said, gesturing to a cardboard box on the floor. "Your personal items have been packed for you. Security will escort you from the building." I looked at Alistair, my direct boss who had always praised my work. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He knew this was wrong, but he didn't have the courage to stand up to them. As 2 security guards walked me to the elevator like a common criminal, past the staring faces of my former colleagues, I didn't feel shame. I felt a surge of adrenaline. They had just handed my lawyer the smoking gun she needed to win the case. The story broke a week later. A reporter from the city's leading investigative journal had gotten a tip. I never found out for sure, but I always suspected it was Javier. The headline was explosive. "Rising star at Innovate Solutions fired after suing for racial harassment." The article was brutal. It detailed my allegations, my stellar work record, and the company's sudden, suspicious decision to fire me. It included an anonymous quote from an insider who confirmed that Declan's behavior was an open secret and that HR had a reputation for protecting star players at all costs. The article went viral. The story was picked up by national news outlets. Innovate Solutions, a company that had built their brand on being progressive and inclusive, was now at the center of a public relations nightmare. Their carefully crafted image was shattering. Major clients began to call, their boards asking pointed questions. A prominent women's business organization, which had given Mr. Sterling an award for promoting diversity the year before, publicly rescinded it. The hashtag #InnovateSoWhite started trending on Twitter. The company went into damage control mode, hiring a high-priced crisis PR firm. They issued a statement filled with corporate jargon, saying they take all allegations seriously and are committed to a diverse and inclusive workplace. But it was too little, too late. The damage was done. The legal battle that followed was a grueling war of attrition. They tried to bury us in paperwork, filing motion after motion to delay the proceedings. They tried to discredit me, digging into my past, trying to find any mistake I had ever made. Their lawyers deposed me for 3 straight days, asking invasive, repetitive questions designed to trip me up and break me down. But with Evelyn Reed by my side, I held firm. I had the truth, and I had the receipts. The turning point came during the discovery phase. Evelyn subpoenaed all internal emails related to my case. What we found was a goldmine. There were emails between Cynthia and Mr. Sterling where they discussed my complaint, referring to me as the troublemaker and strategizing on how to manage the situation without upsetting Declan. There was an email from Mr. Sterling to the board after I was fired, claiming I was a disgruntled employee with a performance problem. It was a documented conspiracy to cover up the harassment and discredit the victim. It was everything Evelyn needed. Faced with the irrefutable evidence of the emails and the mounting public pressure, they knew a jury trial would be a catastrophe for them. Their lawyers called Evelyn. They wanted to settle. They're scared.
Evelyn told me, a triumphant smile on her face. Now we make them pay. Not just with money, we demand change. The negotiations were intense. They offered a substantial financial settlement for me personally, but Evelyn, guided by my wishes, pushed for more. We didn't just want a check, we wanted justice. We wanted to ensure that what happened to me could never happen to anyone else at that company again. Our list of demands was non-negotiable. It wasn't just about money for me, it was about systemic, top-to-bottom change for the company. Evelyn Reed presented the terms with the cool, unshakable confidence of a general who knows she has already won the war. First, there was the financial settlement for me. It was a life-altering sum, compensating for lost wages, emotional distress, and the damage to my professional reputation. It was enough to ensure I would never have to worry about money again. But that was only the beginning. Second, we demanded the immediate termination of both Declan and Cynthia. Their severance packages were to be voided, a consequence of their gross misconduct. They had to be held accountable. Third, we demanded a full public apology from the company and from Mr. Sterling personally. Not a vague corporate statement, but a genuine admission of wrongdoing, acknowledging their failure to protect an employee and their subsequent retaliation. Fourth, and most importantly, we demanded the implementation of a comprehensive, independently audited diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) program. This was not to be a one-day workshop. It was to be a multi-year overhaul, including the hiring of a new empowered head of DEI who would report directly to the board, not the CEO. It would involve mandatory, ongoing training for all employees from the mailroom to the C-suite on racial bias and workplace harassment. It also included the establishment of a new, transparent, and anonymous reporting system for complaints managed by a third-party ethics firm. Finally, we demanded the creation of the Imani Johnson Scholarship for Excellence in Marketing, a 10-year, fully funded scholarship and internship program at the local state university, specifically for promising Black students. The company would not just pay for their education, they would be required to create a real pipeline for diverse talent. Their lawyers balked. They called the demands outrageous and unprecedented. Fine, Evelyn had replied coolly. Then we'll see you in court, and we'll see what a jury thinks of those emails. They folded within 24 hours. They agreed to every single term.
The news of the settlement made headlines again. Innovate Solutions agrees to landmark settlement in discrimination case. The public apology from Mr. Sterling was front-page news. He looked like a broken man, his usual blustering confidence gone, as he read a carefully worded statement about his deep regret and the company's renewed commitment to its founding values. The fallout within the company was seismic. Declan was fired, and, as I later learned, found it impossible to get another job in the industry. His reputation was destroyed. Cynthia was also terminated, her career in HR effectively over. Mr. Sterling was forced into an early retirement by the board of directors, who were desperate to distance the company from the scandal. Alistair, my old boss, was named interim CEO, a quiet man forced into a position of immense responsibility. To his credit, he took the DEI overhaul seriously. I never went back to Innovate Solutions. I had no desire to return to a place that held so many painful memories. Instead, I took a year off. I traveled with Jordan. We went to Ghana and stood in the door of no return at Cape Coast Castle, a profoundly moving experience that put my own struggles into a humbling perspective. We got married in a small ceremony on a beach, surrounded by close friends and my grandmother, whose pride was the only validation I had ever truly needed. After our honeymoon, I knew I couldn't go back to a traditional corporate job. My experience had changed me. I had seen from the inside how broken the system was. I wanted to be part of the solution. With a portion of my settlement, I founded my own consultancy firm, the Sterling Group, named, with a touch of irony, after the man whose failure had inspired its creation. My firm didn't just offer generic DEI training. We worked with companies to conduct deep cultural audits, to identify and dismantle the systemic biases baked into their hiring, promotion, and management practices. We helped them build real, sustainable cultures of inclusion, not just glossy brochures. My first client, surprisingly, was Alistair from Innovate Solutions. "We need help, Imani," he had said over the phone. "Real help, not just PR. You know what's broken better than anyone. Can you help us fix it?" It was a strange full-circle moment. Helping to rebuild the company that had tried to destroy me felt like the ultimate victory. My work was challenging, meaningful, and incredibly successful. I had found my true calling, born from the ashes of my old career. I don't know what happened to Declan. I don't care. My parents, after seeing the full story in the news, called me full of shame and regret, finally understanding the depth of what I had faced. We're slowly, cautiously rebuilding our relationship on a new foundation of honesty and respect. My life today is richer and more purposeful than I could have ever imagined. The lawsuit was the most difficult, painful experience of my life, but it taught me that my voice has power. It taught me that one person, armed with the truth and the courage to speak it, can challenge a giant and win. It taught me that silence is a form of complicity, and that sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to burn it down and build something better in its place. Have you ever faced a situation at work where you had to choose between staying silent and speaking up for what was right? What did you do? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and justice. Remember that your integrity is your most valuable asset, and it is worth fighting for. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power. Thank you for listening.